as those of us that have experienced the blessings and the wonder and the power, I think it's time we broadcast it to every single nook and cranny of this city, to every corner. We need to broadcast, He's a healer. We need to broadcast, He's a redeemer. We need to broadcast, He's a way maker. We need to broadcast, He's a deliverer. We need to broadcast, when you're down and out, He's the lifter of your head. We need to broadcast. You may have tried glory and the splendor and the wonder of.
We're so glad you've joined us today at FAC via live stream, and we're looking forward to a wonderful service. We want to encourage you to help us by sharing this stream on our social media sites. We also want you to interact with us, so please feel free to comment and communicate with us as we move through this service. So, looking forward to a great time. Let's get right to it.
Hello and welcome to First Apostolic Church Live, and this is our Wednesday night forum. It's Sir Dillingham, and absolutely.
Thank you. Those are my people, man. I've been told me that whenever this gets all settled, whatever, they'll have my office ready for me when I go in. So
that's awesome. Well, whatever you're looking forward to, I hope you get to do that relatively soon. And but we're still here. Kind of jump off of what we talked about last week. This next Sunday,
deluge, so
right.
it worked out, I guess.
I mean, an awesome time, and be able to see some of our 1040 see signs and all that, but still to be a part of that. So we want you to come and enjoy that 6 o'clock, and we appreciate life group sessions are this Sunday at 6 p.m. We want to remind everyone and thank everyone for being faithful to your tithes and offering through the Alexio app. Right into our topic of discussion tonight. Look, all these things are about this. That means, obviously, now how many apostolic voices are talk about the importance of, having an apostolic voice, what it means, what it practically means to do that, to speak, to think, to act, to be apostolic, no matter where we are or what we're worldview, which we laid a good foundation last about.
From the biblical perspective, I think it's so relevant, and I think sometimes we can miss it because so much of our costs after that if you don't experience salvation first, and so we understand all of that. We talk a lot about what He can do, the miraculous things and all of that. But when you read to spread the gospel, which is the good news of the kingdom. It's the values of the kingdom. He chose to spread that message through us. As a matter of fact, we're epistles, which is a book, the doing the good works so that they can see our good works and glorify our Father which is in heaven. The Scripture's talking about being salt and being light in our world. We're in the world, we're not of the world. And so understanding that from a biblical perspective, that God did not call us, the Bible Testament church, maybe not of their own volition early, because the first, 5 to 8 years of the church was primarily in Jerusalem, and God sent trouble and persecution and all of that. But it ended up in the spreading of the gospel until, the Scripture records that all of Asia heard the gospel because of missionary endeavors. And so what we find is this. We find from the biblical perspective, we find that each and every person has a purpose. We have a mission. We have a responsibility. Yeah. And so whatever, for each individual person, that's going to vary what the specific calling might be. The specific vocation or specific details, it's going to vary what God calls us to do. Our primary purpose is to be salt and light in this world.
Amen.
And so those are things that we do. Those are vocations. And God called us into those so that not just so that we can fulfill those responsibilities, but so that in those vocations and those people around us, we can be the salt and the light to our world to show them the love of God.
Right. And that's a wonderful way I thought about when talking about this is in John 15 when Jesus tells his disciples that I chose you out of the world.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that is good for us to address, maybe you can speak on this a little bit, because you see that very clearly. Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he says, I've chosen you out of this world. And so it's possible for us to think, well, all these things that are happening in the world, that's not my business. That's not my affair. I'm not a part of this world. So what does that mean to me? So how does
it's a great question.
Modern discipleship kind of flow with that?
It's a great question, and you see the disciples early on wrestled with this all the way up until the very end. They go to the Mount of Transfiguration, Peter, James, and John. Yeah. And they're like, man, let's just stay here, right? This is like youth congress. Let's just stay here, not go anywhere, and just enjoy it. Let's just build a monument, and we'll just live here, whatever. And Jesus is like, no, that's not why we came. It's not my purpose. It's not what my mission is. And so, and even up until the very end, they asked the question, okay, so like this is awesome and stuff. Like you're resurrected. That's great. So like when are you going to restore Israel?
Yeah.
Right? When are you going to restore our nationality, our national pride? And Jesus like, that's not, my kingdom is not of this earth. And so there is this conflict that we have to resolve. Yeah. And that is understanding that the kingdom of God is not of this world. And so from a kingdom-minded perspective, from a biblical perspective, we understand I'm pulling you out of the world so that I can send you back into the world. Right. And so understanding that our hope is not in any of that stuff. It's not in any, whether it's career or wealth or whatever, power. Our hope is not in any of that because we understand that's not what our focus is. And I think this is so critical. It really is important. I've mentioned it before, but Barna did a study, even higher age groups, and it said that I think it was almost 3/4 of Christians don't see a connection between their vocation and their calling or their ministry. That's dangerous. That means we've missed the point of the fact that where we spend the overwhelming majority of our time, God has put us back in there. Not so it's a dichotomy that we've got to kind of resolve of, he called us out of this world. He said this to Paul, I pulled you out. Now I'm going to send you back to them. Yeah. And that's really what we have to understand. That's what God has called us to do is in whatever capacity, whatever arena we're in, He's pulled us out of the world so we can go back to the world to be a light to them.
That's wonderful. And it's a really deep conversation. And we're going to try to get to it as well as we can.
Right.
But it really comes back to this, there's, you can go to a Bible study, you can go to Sunday school, and you can learn about God's power to redeem us from sin, which is kind of pulling us out of the world. And it's very easy to get kind of tunnel vision on that and not ever to really consider, well, what does it mean for me to be put back in the world? Like what you just said. I pulled you out of the world so that I can send you back into the world. And that, that was always the plan. Yeah. Because how did Jesus recruit, not all of them, but particular disciples? He said, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. So from the beginning, even before, he had, as it were, pulled down. And I think this is a really important discussion, whether you are young teenagers in this conversation, but even adults, we need to wrap our minds around this concept of what it means to be sent back into the world. And it might not mean exactly what we always think it is. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some people they narrow that down, that concept of being sent into the world to being, I'll be a missionary to another country.
Right.
Or
absolutely.
I'll be a street preacher with a sign. Right?
Right.
Now, I'm not saying those are fine.
An evangelist.
So some people narrow, even within the church.
Absolutely.
As a pastor, you can talk about this. The way that God sends me into the world is I'm going to be a Sunday school teacher. Now, we love Sunday school teachers. We need many more Sunday school teachers. But what we're talking about today is that being sent in the world means it's more than that, right?
It does.
It's
Absolutely.
more than just like what ministry I'm involved in, what kind of school I go to. So how is this concept of being sent into the world, how is that tied into God's plan for my life as it pertains to career, school, city that you live in?
The essence of all of it. And I think what you mentioned there, I think is a really important concept to grasp, because I do believe that for a long time we have connected calling, get convicted, we surrender to God, calling to. It's got to be some type of functional church ministry, and that may or may not be.
Right.
But here's what I know is that God has a purpose for every single child of God. Standing behind a pulpit or not, you have a purpose, you have a calling.
Yeah.
And so as we're saturated with His presence, so here's one of the things I think He's not. You know, we sing Jesus be the center of it all. We sing songs like that. The reality is He can't just be the center. He has to be all of it.
Yeah.
And so it affects self, like on the golf course, understand the things like send a wrong message. And when we say things like that, it's true. We know that that's true. Those things don't have the answer. But that does not cancel those things out as being viable places where God may call us to go and to be salt and light. And where I heard this was, where it kind of hit me was reflecting on the conference call I had with Senator Scott last week and hearing him talk. And he was talking about how, as a college student coming to his faith, giving his life to God and saying, he said to his mentor, he said, I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. Didn't really feel called, like, preaching, pastoring wasn't really his calling. And the mentor said, if you want to serve, pray about public service. And so he said, I have an opportunity to stand for truth. I have an opportunity to stand for righteousness, for biblical values. I have an opportunity to help the poor and the weak and the downtrodden by what I'm doing. Now, he said, I understand it's not all in this, but it's God placing me in this position to be to hold up the banner of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that really got a hold of me after I got done last week. I was praying about it, praying about our conversation. I'm like, I don't want to send an unintentional message, because I believe that there might be some young people that are watching, or there might be some people that maybe you've contemplated going into politics because, well, it's not, politics, God's not in politics, whatever. No, that we understand that. But in every facet and every capacity of life, we need representation. We need somebody to hold up the banner, to shine the light of Jesus in whatever capacity. And the issue becomes this. The issue becomes, what is God's a teacher just to be a teacher, or a politician just to be a politician? He calls you into those specific vocations, or stay-at-home mom, or whatever it is. He calls you in that to shine the light of Jesus and to be an example to the rest of the world. And so what we don't have a calling when we come to church and then we go someplace else and we set our calling up on the shelf and we do our job and then we go home and pick our calling back up. Right? It's everywhere we go. And I wonder how much more would it invigorate our spiritual lives if we recognize that 24/7, 365, that we're operating and functioning in our calling. Maybe God has you on that job for a reason, or maybe He called you into that career for a reason.
That's awesome. That's wonderful, and it's actually an extremely hopeful message, because ultimately we know that our calling is going to be wrapped up in the heart of Jesus.
Right.
So a few weeks ago, one of my favorite conversations from this Wednesday night forum series is we talked about John, who was the closest to his heart.
Right.
And how it's important for us to be close to the heart of Jesus. The heart of Jesus is the lost. It's the world. It's all the children that He's seeking to redeem. And so that's a hopeful message, because, and maybe you can address this a little bit.
Sure.
It can be very paralyzing talking about our calling for young people, because they feel like, I don't know what it is, and I'm paralyzed because I don't know what to do.
Sure.
Or even for adults, and you broach the subject of calling, and it can get kind of weird, because then they can think, well, I think I missed it.
Sure.
I don't thinking about our discipleship, rather than thinking of a calling as a series of things that need to be done.
Yes.
Closer to the age of life you are. Maybe you talk about that.
Asked that question so many times, like, how do you find the will of God? Yeah. Which, by the way, we're doing a devotional starting tomorrow, so you can join us by, should have sent out a link, or it's on our Facebook page on YouVersion. You can follow along. Right. And this one we're doing, Hearing the Voice of God by Rick Warren, a 10-day devotional. And so I get that question a lot. So a few things I think are important. Number one is developing the ability to hear the voice.
Absolutely.
We have to be intentional about learning. And, God has to run us through the ringer but you have to learn how to tune your voice. The second thing is this, and this is what I would say, no matter where you're at in life, and the Omega, He knows. He knew that, and He set up the plan.
Right.
We could get into the discussion about predestination. The Bible says, to whom He did foreknow, He also did predestinate.
Right.
And it's not just talking about the church. Yeah. That's a part of it, but it's talking about us as believers in His foreknowledge, establishing our steps. It doesn't mean that we can't willfully pull away from Him, but it means in His foreknowledge He establishes. So God knew all that. Yeah. What I would say is this: the key is living a surrendered life is the key. When your life is totally and completely surrendered to God, that says, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. What I've found is number one, either God will make it abundantly clear, this is what you're supposed to do. And He'll make it just abundantly clear to you. He'll speak to you in a way that you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that He is speaking to you about that.
Yeah.
Or sometimes what I've also noticed as I've gotten older, looking back over my life and thinking there were so many times where I thought I was making decisions. And in reality, it was like He was just like closing the room in, like herding cattle.
Yeah.
He was funneling me in.
That's awesome.
To where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this decision. And God's like, well, good for you, because that's awesome. The only choice, that's all you've got left, right? God will guide and direct. Yeah. The third thing that I'll throw out, and we can talk about more in depth if we want to. I'm trying to just hit some high points. So finding that passion, what we're passionate about, and letting that be the driver for what we do and where we're engaged and whatever. And here's part of it is sometimes we don't even know ourselves, right? I remember when I enrolled in junior college. I was gonna go into psychology, and I got into my first class of psychology, and I'm like, I hate psychology. Yeah. Like, I hate this. And I offhandedly took a couple business classes, thinking, well, I'll just I'll come in handy at some point down the line. But God knew. Yeah. And so God, again, like herding cattle, herded me into the business world and pulled something out of me that I didn't even know was there.
That's awesome. Right.
Evangelizing was the same way. God herded me like a cattle and pulled something out of me that I did not realize was even any sense. And I don't, when I was at Solo, I hated the first year I was there. Yeah. Like, I should be doing full-time ministry, bless God. I got an associate's degree from IBC. Don't you realize how powerful that is? But once I totally surrendered and said, God, you have me here for a reason and purpose, all of a sudden, man, passion, and He pulled stuff out of me. And one of the things that God has really been dealing with me about now is God has the ability to provide for you in your present while also preparing you for your future. Yeah. And so you might be looking at it today and thinking, well, there's no purpose to what I'm doing right now. It might be God's providing for you today so He can prepare you for your tomorrow.
Right. And so much there. That could be its own Wednesday night, just that concept.
Sure.
But what I'll testify is, not only is it true that sometimes we don't know ourselves, and then God, if you're surrendered to Him, He'll work things out. That's true for me.
Sure.
But I think God is even powerful enough. Our weaknesses or our strengths, we try to railroad into those areas. Right. And then sometimes you're pushing against, what God's doing, and God puts you in this path. And I had a really interesting, awesome experience today in terms of that, just in my prayer, agonizing over it. But I was just wondering, how's this going to work out? What's going to happen? But, being surrendered to God and doing what I felt His voice telling me. Sure. All of a sudden, that situation takes care of itself. And you look at it and you think, wow, that's interesting how that happened. And it's almost as like God saying, yeah, what'd you think was going to happen?
Right.
I got this. Don't
Right.
worry about it. So
Right, sure.
That's what I love about it. That's why it's so hopeful.
Yes.
Is because
Yes.
there's on-ramps, I guess you could say it this way. There's on-ramps to your calling wherever you are in life. There's on-ramps wherever you are to engage in your calling.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll just interject here real quick. That's why we've been pushing and promoting for the last few years this phrase, and hopefully it resonates with people, but the phrase is everyday missionaries, where you live, work, and
Right.
play.
Yeah.
Because that is the essence of all that we do and all that we are. And if we'll live on mission,
Yeah.
right? If we'll live on mission where we live, where we work, and where we play, if we live on mission, that's what our calling is. That's our primary calling.
Absolutely.
And so when we do that, then what happens is God begins to open doors and build connections and guide us and direct us, like you're talking about, like opening up passions, helping us to know us. And he'll put us in places and connect us with people and connect us, in arenas that we never dreamed were possible. Yeah. And the problem, I think, for us, for many people sometimes, is because, again, we have this view of like this calling is something way out here. Yeah. And one of these days I'll get there. After I study enough, I'll get there.
But I'll be qualified someday. Yeah,
exactly.
Like that.
And so, but if you'll live and fulfill the primary mission of being the light of Jesus,
absolutely,
in the primary spaces of life where you live, work, and play, then what will happen is God will open up that door and take you to bigger things, bigger places than you ever dreamed possible.
So, if you're, we can go a lot of different ways.
Sure.
One way we thought of going tonight is, let's not just theorize. Let's get more practical.
Sure.
When it comes to making those decisions, living on mission, can an apostolic young person live on mission and go to a secular university?
Sure. Good question.
An apostolic man or woman live on mission and work in, obviously work in a secular business? And what does it look like for them to live on mission?
Man,
in those ways, or what kind of decisions does that present to us?
Absolutely. I think we understand that, when you go into that kind of an arena, you're going into, territory that contradicts your value system and who you are. So I think absolutely. That's a good point. Absolutely, a student can go into a secular setting. I say secular. I was kind of studying that this afternoon. I don't like that term. I think we need to kind of remove that because it means nothing spiritual. But wherever we go, it's spiritual for us. There should not be anything secular for us, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so if you're a student and you go into you're totally surrendered to God, and you feel like that God's will and God's plan is for you to go get you an education, go get a higher education, go to college, whatever that might look like. When you do that, understanding that God's sending you there, knowing full well that that's an arena where thoughts and concepts and philosophies that totally contradict his value system are going to be there, that's why he's sending you there. Yeah. He's sending you there so that you can be a light, so that you can be trained. If you look at Moses, one of the reasons that Moses was effective was because he was schooled and understood the ways of Egypt. Yeah. And so an education, a college education, can actually be a very beneficial thing because you're surrounded by humanistic, postmodern thought. Yeah. And you're challenged. You have to have a support system. You have to stay connected to the body. Yeah. Can I go pastoral for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
I am blown away. So I've lived in 2 college towns. My ministry has been in college towns. I was blown away at how many students would show up at our church in Champaign. They would show up on a Sunday and are like, oh, hey, I'm going to the University of Illinois. Never came to check out the church, never came to check out. And we have to understand that if we're going into that arena, that needs to be our primary focus first of I need to make sure that I have a support system. I've got people around me. I'm going to stay connected. I'll use Naomi Kufel, who's a great example. I mean, obviously we had the connection, but she was going to the University of Illinois. And that was one of her big draws to University of Illinois was, I know that there's a support system there.
That's awesome.
And so, man, absolutely. God can anoint you. God can empower you. You have to be aware of it, though.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of that.
Absolutely.
And this translates into any occupation or vocation or whatever. God can call you to any occupation, any vocation for His purpose and for His plan.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? I don't think you have to go on a college campus and hold up a banner every day in the quad and
Right.
a megaphone and preach at people.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Congratulations, Naomi, on your master's degree, by the way. Throw that in there. Want to say
Way to go.
congratulations. That's awesome.
Awesome job from the greatest university in the world, University of Illinois.
So you said it, and I want to make sure we don't cheapen any of those words just by saying it without really understanding.
Sure.
We are everyday missionaries.
Yes.
So what would the process be for a missionary, a licensed sponsored missionary by the UPCI? Nothing's accidental, nothing's happened.
Sure.
Everything is intentional. So when we talk about being everyday missionaries, that young adult going to college, your preparation process is not just, let's get all my books, let's make sure I got a place to stay. I want to make sure my schedule's good. Your preparation process is, as you said, how do I maintain how do I thrive as a missionary when I'm in this place? And it doesn't look like, because I don't know, I am not a missionary, but I don't hear about many missionaries, going and, like you said, holding signs
Right.
and just shouting on street corners.
Right.
Right? They are praying that God connects them with influential people. That can happen in workplaces and
Absolutely.
in schools, and that's kind of this everyday missionary concept. Right?
100%. Absolutely. I think, maybe could cause a firestorm by saying this, but one of the first things that the missionary does is he studies to try to understand the culture.
Yeah.
Because one of the hard parts for us, and this kind of goes this whole coronavirus deal, because we're in this culture and we have such a vested interest,
Right.
that we feel a responsibility to kind of defend what we think the culture should be versus truly evaluating what the culture is.
Right.
Right?
That's a good point.
So if I'm a missionary going to Malawi, I'm not gonna stand up and hold a sign of like, bless God, we've got to get back to Christian values.
That is such a tremendous point.
I'm going to look and say, okay, this is the culture of Malawi.
Yeah.
What is the best way that I can reach my world? And here's the problem in America is, particularly from the Christian standpoint, anytime we start trying to approach we're going to talk some stuff tonight, or walking away from the truth or whatever. And I'll give you an example, like, we have lighting, we have background, we have some of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not because we want to emulate anything in the world, but because we understand we're living in a world where technology and presentation is important and all of those kinds of things. I'm not saying we should chase culture. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm saying we need to be who we are. But at the end of the day, we also have to understand if I live in a world where, culture is very village oriented, if I go and try to start a megachurch, it's not going to work. And this is Malawi. Malawi's very village oriented. And so what did they do? They bring in Bible college students, they train them for 27 straight days, and they say, now go back to your village and start a church in your home. And so understanding the culture, being a student, I think this is one of our weaknesses because we have been so isolated from the world and we feel a responsibility to protect what we think should be.
Absolutely. I just, just that concept just jumps out. I'm sitting here looking at John and some of the crew that's working there. You mentioned the lights and everything we have here. This is just how we prepare for this live stream. But you could prepare your message for your workplace a different way. And time you put into preparing for your message shows you how much you care about your message.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because if I put hours and hours and hours in just this room, all the setup that's done here that takes all the time that it does. We don't do that for any other reason than we care so much about this message, and we want people that aren't bought in already to give it a chance to resonate. And that's the same thing. That's a tremendous point. You can't just expect people to honor have that connection.
Do it this way because this is the way we've done it, and you're supposed to like it the way we've done it.
Right, yeah.
Right? And I think it really goes back to, going back to your original point, I think it really goes back to, like you said, how do you do that? It really goes back to what we've been pushing and promoting and really trying to drive home, and that is the relationship component. Yeah. And again, we've struggled because we don't understand the culture.
Yeah.
And because we feel a responsibility to kind of push back against ungodly culture versus the missionary mindset that says, I don't have a responsibility to push back ungodly culture. I've got a responsibility to reach it. Yeah. So I'm going to go build relationships. I'm going to live my life. A college student living on campus, their focus should be, number one, I'm not going to be influenced. I'm going to be the influencer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm looking for people that I can connect with. They may be living like the devil. They may be living like as far away from God as possible, but are they disciplable? Are they open? Yeah. And are they going to look to me as somebody who can present a message of hope? If I'm presenting a message of anger, because that generation is open to less professional, just kind of a more casual atmosphere where they can kind of and it's not the culture I was raised in, so sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. Yeah. But we got to be careful not to call that ungodly just because it doesn't reflect the way we've always done it. Yeah. And so it all goes back to that relationship, building relationships. You can be any place, any career, any education, any university, whatever, and build individual relationships and be a light in that area.
That's awesome. And I feel some conviction right now, and I want to share why to everybody watching and just kind of own up to something that this whole idea of living on mission, it needs to be more pervasive. And I'm just speaking for myself. It needs to be more pervasive for me than I've allowed it to be. And the reason I'm feeling conviction, I'm talking about this is, just like many other people, my family's trying to find a house. So when we were looking for our neighborhood,
that little issue, right?
Well, we're not talking about the house we might. We're talking about the house that's in shambles now.
I got you.
When we were finding a house, I'll confess.
Yeah.
Our concerns were, how much does this cost?
Right.
Can I afford this house? If we have to grow into this house, how long will it maintain?
Sure.
What we're doing?
Sure.
We looked at the public school system around a little bit. We talked about different ways we could fix up the house and make it nice for us. But what I didn't let happen is, in that, Lord, directly, what kind of influence can I have on this street, this neighborhood? What kind of people live there? What kind of families live there? And that's kind of this practical concept. How big of a decision is buying a house?
Sure.
And as a missionary, we're not going to attach that to the mission. That can happen. You're thinking about, is it good for my major?
Yeah.
Can I afford it? All of that. But what living on mission means is we're adding another question in there, and it's a more important question than that. And that is this where God desires me to be his voice? Same thing for a job. And I know you've dealt with some young questions. And
the biblical worldview, that everything runs through that filter. Yeah. And the biblical worldview is, I have a purpose. Yeah. And so everything that I do, every single thing that I do is driven by purpose. Yeah. Everywhere I go, where I shop, where I eat, where I live, where I play golf, whatever I do, all of that is driven by that mission.
We have gained from your influence at City Barbecue. How many of our service projects in the quarantine phase has been in partnership with City Barbecue?
All of them.
Every single one of them.
Was it 4 or 5 maybe? 5?
Every single one of them. And that's not all we've done. We've done so would that have been possible?
Right. Be blessed by that, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's cool is I went in there a couple Sundays ago, as is my custom. Like Jesus went to the synagogue, as was his custom. He went to City Barbecue. And I walked in and they watched the service. The workers all watched the service up until the lunch rush. And like, we caught most of your sermon. We didn't catch all of it, but we caught most of it. And that's just from the intentionality of realizing that every single thing that we do
that is amazing. That's
is
awesome.
Purposeful. It's driven by purpose.
That's awesome. We can go further, but we're going to switch gears a little bit, maybe go on a little bit of can of worms.
Can I just interject something there real quick? Because I really felt this as you were talking, a message that I want to convey, students, and they're kind of thinking about future or whatever. What I would say is this: we need apostolic lawyers.
Absolutely.
We need apostolic heart surgeons like Dr. Johnson.
Yeah.
We need, apostolic pop around to, and we were talking earlier before we started about, that conflict about the kingdom versus patriotism and all that kind of stuff. And not politicians for the sake of bless God, we got to change this nation and get back.
Yeah.
Not from that perspective, but from the perspective of we have a responsibility, like for example, an arena and a capacity where they can make an impact and make a difference. And so I want a generation to raise up. We've talked about the younger generation, millennial generation, thankful for John Shellhart, brought him in. And, my conversation to him was a media person, communications person is the modern day outreach director.
Right.
And unleashing, I wonder how much talent we've missed over the years because we felt like the only way you can have value is if you preach sermons.
Right. Yeah.
And I want every parent to know, I want every person to know, don't be afraid to go get a career, to go get an education, don't be afraid of that with the mindset. Now don't just do it to go do it and do it like, well, this is going to be my this is going to be my backup plan, my safety net in case some other stuff. No, I'm going to be a banker, a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, whatever it is, with the purpose of, most of us remember the Into His Marvelous Light Bible studies, right? I heard the guy that printed those. He grew up with, I think it was Brother Macy in Texas. They grew up together, were buddies forever. He started his own printing company and built it into this multi-million-dollar business. And they did this Bible study, and he was printing Into His Marvelous Light Bible studies for free. And just printing them out, and was able to be a blessing to the church. And
that's awesome.
We need those types of things.
How that functions. What we want to say, you can clarify this. What we want to see is we want to see just kind of an unleashing of all of these gifts for the kingdom, right?
Sure.
We've been talking about this for a long time about how we know that institutional type, factory ministries from the church are not going to get it done. Like, all these
Correct.
made to order ministry type things. But it's got to be this unleashed. Like you said, I am a missionary, whether I ever hold a microphone or stand behind a pulpit.
100%.
That I am as legitimate of a missionary
100%.
as there ever has been. And I think that's a wonderful message. That is an important one.
Truthfully, we've heard some amazing stories about God raising up church planners.
Yeah.
Who are just workplace missionaries.
Yeah. Right.
And they were living on mission, and all of a sudden, man, this little pocket of revival popped up, and they got thrust into an arena where they had never been there before, never even contemplated, never even thought about that. And so, what pocket of revival is waiting on us? I look back, I'm not a person of regrets, but I worked in the corporate world for 11 years. And, I look back and realize miracles. I tell the story about some of the miracles that I saw about 4 houses down from us. And I was talking to them when they moved back. And they said, one of the reasons we moved where we did is because we want to be close to you guys. We want our family to be connected with your family. And you just never know. You don't know what kind of influence you're having. I'll be honest. I'll just be really honest. There's been a part of me that has actually contemplated jumping back into the workforce just for the opportunity to connect. That happened. But seriously, that's one area where I kind of miss not being surrounded by people and being able to really build true relationships in that environment.
So part of this whole conversation is based around kind of the position that we find ourselves in right now. Of course, we haven't had, I don't know, what is it now, 59, close to 60 days where we haven't had a church service here.
Yeah.
We've done live stream and all that, but now more than ever, we are seeing the necessity, but also the benefit of people that are living on mission, because you literally can't invite anybody to church like the traditional way anymore. It just can't happen. You can point them to a live stream and share videos with them, but now more than ever, you are in a situation. Every single one of us are in a situation where the only way someone will know that you are a missionary or a Christian or apostolic is just the way you live, the way you speak, and the way you talk, because it's all shifted. So we want to talk about, at some point, there's going to be a shift back to normal, whether it's slow or fast. And the, I don't know if you call it threat or the temptation is, let's just make everything the way it was before.
Yeah.
You see these things happening. So as a pastor, what are some things that you see that this situation has forced us into? I believe that God's behind, covering us and ushering us in this situation. But what are some things that you hope stick even after all of these mandates and all the different, government-forced regulations are kind of lifted?
Sure. I'm hoping if church growth happens in the first 5 years of existence of a church. So when you're part of a church plant, adaptability is the name of the game. Flexibility. We had service at 9. We had service at 10:30. Sometimes we had service in the afternoon. Sometimes there was a while where we had Sunday night service. So you just learn that flexibility. The older you get as a church, and the more set you get, the more rigid you become. One of the things I hope happens. Some of the things that we have felt like were so critical and so important, I think this situation has actually helped us to realize, at the end of the day, those things really don't mean that much. You know what I'm saying? Like we could really meet anywhere or whatever. The things that we think were really important are important. So that flexibility, that adaptability from a corporate level, I think is really critical, really important. I think this it has unleashed a care and concern and compassion for others.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I really believe that, every day I'm seeing and hearing stories about people within the body caring for others.
Yeah.
I'm hearing stories about, people living on mission and bringing hope to people, and, maybe just small acts of kindness or whatever. That, I think that's something. Something I'm working on right now, and the Lord is really dealing with me strongly. I sent out a message to our core leadership team, and I didn't get any responses back, which was kind of hurtful, but that's okay. I'll let that slide. But sent out a message to core leadership team, just an urgency that I feel in the Holy Ghost to dream big, because I feel like that the mission that God has for us is so much bigger than what we know or believe. Yeah. And so how is that going to happen? It's going to happen by every member of the body. And I'm not talking about members in like membership. I'm talking about member like hand, foot, finger, member of the body. Every single member of the body living on mission wherever they are, and being a light, and just watching God begin to, again, these little pockets of revival begin to pop up, and these missions we go and make that happen. So I really think that those are the things. I think it's broken some of that rigidity. I think it's opened up our awareness of people around us and how they need our help, and I hope we maintain that throughout. And then I hope that mindset of every day is an opportunity to be a light of hope to somebody in our world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I can attest to that. I have greatly enjoyed seeing the intentionality behind, a lot of people that are getting involved and doing, different things to show care and concern, and, comfort and whatever that may be.
Can I say this as pastor real
Yeah.
quick, just to interject?
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I'll put the church on notice just a little bit of, personally, it has broken off some fear in me of, I don't know if we want to do that because, man, it's going to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how people are going to think about, they might think that you're this, or they might think you're doing that or whatever. And it honestly has broken off, don't be scared, but it's broken off some fear of me of, how are people going to perceive it? What are they going to think? And my only aim, my only goal is reaching our world.
Yeah.
Unlike anything I've ever felt. Y'all know I'm passionate.
Yeah.
I have never felt an inner drive like I feel right now. I feel like that we're in the end times like we've never been before.
Absolutely.
The hour's late, the responsibility, and I feel this weight of the glory of God, of what He's called us to do and who He's called us to be. And in order to get there, we can't be hindered by fear.
Right.
We have to act in faith.
Yes.
And so I would just kind of challenge the church, like, buckle up and know that we're committed to the apostolic message. We're committed to His word. We're not going anywhere that way. But we're not going to be inhibited because somebody may misread what our intentions are or whatever.
Yeah.
That fear's gone.
That is awesome. Isn't it interesting? We see kind of a war in the spiritual realm happening with, there's just so much fear, so much anxiety, but it's in that moment where I totally get what you're saying, that the Lord brings us in victory over every fear, and really unleashes something that couldn't have been unleashed before. And I look forward to that. That's exciting to me. I hope it's exciting to you. And I've really loved this conversation about, this concept of being apostolic in our modern culture, in our modern society, living every day as a missionary, what all that means. Maybe they're in that part of life, they're trying to make some decisions about jobs and all that. I think this is a great resource for them.
Absolutely. God's plan. God has a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the
So
key, is
hopeful.
seeking that plan. Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we enjoyed being with you today. There's a lot. I'm going to watch this later, but there's a ton. There's probably about 3 Wednesdays worth there that we could have really got into. But
Yeah. I just my hope is, my prayer is that we do have that mind shift and that focus of saying that, wherever I am, I'm in His purpose and I'm in His plan. I'm doing what He's called me to do.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
my prayer is, over the next 5 years, my prayer is we start to see an unleashing of businessmen. I've thought about, starting a Christian Business Person Association to connect with. I want to see, Christian business people start to happen. I want to see doctors and lawyers, and I think we're going to see an unleashing of all of that.
Yeah.
But that's only their secondary,
yeah,
role.
Right.
Their primary role
Yeah.
is missionary.
absolutely. That's awesome. We've enjoyed having you with us tonight, and we want to remind you again, Sunday is going to be a great day. We've got First Kids at 9:45.
9:45.
9:45, earlier than normal. So make sure you get the kids up and you're ready to go at 9:45 so that, and really it's first come, first serve for parking.
And I'm super stoked because we've got 2 48-foot flatbed trailers.
Yes.
It's probably the largest
You can
pulpit
run.
or
You can do-
platform
yeah.
I've ever preached on.
Yeah.
So whoever's running camera is going to have a hard time following me, that's for sure. But
Right. It's gonna be awesome, and we hope to see you there. But that's it for tonight. God bless everyone, and have a
Amen.
great evening.
Thank you for joining us today at FAC. We certainly hope that you enjoyed this live stream service today. Now, we want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to continue in giving, and you can do that by going to our church website, which is factoledo.com, or you can also do that on our Alexio app. Also, we want to make sure that you're following us on all of our social media platforms, and be sure and turn on all of the push notifications so you're keeping up with all of the information as it becomes available. And you can also interact with us and communicate with us. We certainly want to stay in touch with you during this time. Again, join us every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. for live stream of our Bible study, and every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. for our full family worship service. We look forward to seeing you then. God bless.